Over the last few days in Fortune and Freedom, we've been looking into the euro, how it's inherently flawed and how it might fail. And yet the common currency persists, mostly because leaders in Europe want it to. They are focused on solidarity and looking good in the face of things like Brexit. However, someone who knows a bit about solidarity inside the European Union is, of course, Nigel Farage. And Nigel, you've noticed something in the last few weeks when it comes to that solidarity.
Yes, I mean, in my 21 years there, constantly people talked about EU solidarity. And what the word meant is that everybody must agree. There must be no divergence of view. Whatever the European Commission said, or perhaps Mrs. Merkel said, we must all agree, because otherwise we're not showing solidarity with each other. It's a word that was used again and again and again in speeches in the European Parliament. And one of the remarkable things is the extent to which that solidarity has held, between very different countries over many, many years. And it was strained several times with the Eurozone bailouts, but in the end, they always managed to put a package together. The first sort of break we saw with solidarity was after 2015, with the mass migration of people coming across the Mediterranean, very much encouraged by EU policy. And the boss of Hungary, Viktor Orban, said, no. We are not going to have migrant quotas into Hungary determined by Mrs. Merkel and the European Commission. That was a break with EU solidarity, but a relatively minor one. What has happened over vaccines is of a different magnitude. So the UK leaves, we leave the European Medicines Agency, leading to The Guardian and commentators on the Ramona side of the argument saying Brexit was a death cult. Lots of Britons will die because we've left the safe embrace of the European Medicines Agency. Well, thank God we did, because we've got vaccines, an amazing rollout program that's happening. It's even down to my age group now, I'm pleased to say. And it's a Horlicks, isn't it, across the water? A complete Horlicks. A woman with a psychology degree from Cyprus was put in charge. I mean, you wouldn't let her run a bath, let alone be in charge of the vaccines for 400 million people. And so we've now vaccinated, 5 to 6 times the number of those countries. Reinfection rates are rocketing in Poland, in Italy, in Hungary. I mean, they are rocketing, sort of up 50% over last week are the kind of numbers that I'm talking about. And kind of European governments, under huge pressure from their press and public opinion, are saying enough. And they're all running off. They're breaking with European solidarity, whether it's Denmark or Hungary or wherever it is, and they're saying, right, we now are going to sort out our own vaccines. The hell with you, you bunch of losers in Brussels. And it's the first time, ever since this thing was formed back in 1957, when the original community got together, it's the first time that what is said at the centre is being met with such wholesale disrespect. And you've seen the way they've behaved. Von der Leyen putting back a hard border in Ireland for a few hours, then withdrawing it. Now this Belgian idiot, Michel, who was the president of the council, saying that Britain is now refusing to export vaccines. No, it's them that's refusing to export vaccines. They will never admit to their own failure. They will lash out and blame everybody. And frankly, European public opinion is saying enough is enough. So it's a real breakdown in the community method, a real breakdown in the way the whole thing works. And it's very real.
Solidarity seems like a bit of a way of covering up your own failures, as you've said a few times there at the end. But to me, and I think to you as well, the biggest problem with all of this is the euro. It's the idea that a common currency can be shared between all these countries. And as a result of that attempt, you're getting this divergence between these different nations. And eventually that will lead to a much deeper form of breakdown of solidarity inside the European Union or the Eurozone. How is that going to unfold?
Well, look, it's not just a common currency, Nick, is it? It's a European, it's an economic and monetary union. I mean, the dollar's a common currency if you're trading oil. This is a much, much deeper level of economic integration than that. As I said at the start of this, in previous times when bailouts were needed for Eurozone countries, albeit reluctantly, but the North were prepared to put their hands in their pockets. And we're talking the Germans, the Dutch, those kind of countries. To me, once solidarity is broken, once respect for the central organization, which has always been the European Commission. It's always been the unelected bureaucracy that has run this thing. I ranted about it for 20 years. No one listened for 20 years, but I did my best. Once that starts to break down, the next euro crisis which comes, which it will, because even though we're seeing inflation coming back across much of the Western world, the South is still stuck in deflation, which means their debt crisis actually gets worse as each year goes on. And I think, and I can't tell you how or when, and you're the guy that's written the book about this, but the next time the Dutch are told to dip their hands in their pockets, I think I know what the response from the Dutch tabloids is, and from what Dutch public opinion will be. So I think the implications of solidarity breaking down, leading to a euro crisis, far more serious than anything we've seen before. I think it makes it that much more likely.
Brexit followed a precise legal path that was included in the European treaties.
Yeah.
As the current Dutch and the likely next Dutch Prime Minister has pointed out, the Eurozone and many of the EU's other related policies don't have exit mechanisms. You cannot escape in any legally established way. So, that must absolutely mortify the people in Brussels who realize that this pressure is growing and growing and growing, and people will want to leave all these different policies, whether it's the vaccines or the euro or anything in between. So how does this play out? It was fairly simple for Britain to leave, but it's not going to be so simple for nations to leave the euro.
Well, it didn't feel simple to leave because the whole establishment refused to accept the result of the referendum. Those ghastly Ramonas. They've all gone to ground now, I'm rather pleased to say. Yeah, there is no playbook for leaving the euro, but, and you're a better economic historian than I am, over the course of the last century, there have been countless economic and monetary unions that have broken down, with countries then launching their own currency, be it backed by gold or not. And that's the scary thing really about this, that as and when it does happen, the impact of it, the economic impact of it, could be very dramatic, could even put big strains on parts of the global banking system. So, what we're talking about here would be one of the biggest defaults in the history, the economic history of mankind. I say again, I don't know when it's going to happen. It's not going to happen next Thursday, but it's something long-term investors need to think about very, very carefully.
And that's why we'll continue to cover it in Fortune and Freedom. Nigel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.